live. I'm going to start the recording. Okay, we are live. We are live. We're going to double check, make sure everything's going good here, being the first episode. So let's make sure that we did everything right. That's number one. So let's go to our channel. All right, looks like it's working. Okay. All right, we are live. We are live. Waiting for people to join. All right, so while everybody is joining, welcome to the You Heard Me podcast with Hope Gables Canine. My name is Nick. This is my beautiful wife, Alyssa. Some of you have met Alyssa if you are a client of ours. And really, without Alyssa's support, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And all right, well, again, while we're waiting for people to join, we are a behavior modification company. To give a little background for those of you who don't know about Hope Gables Canine, we do basic obedience as well, but behavior modification is primarily what we focus on. So aggression, resource guarding, separation anxiety, you name it. So we, if you follow us on Instagram, we post tons of videos of our work. So definitely encourage you to check those videos out as well if you're struggling with your dog. And why a podcast? So this is something that we've wanted to launch for a while now. So it's actually been a couple of years in the making. I'm very excited to be sitting here right now. I'm very excited to be doing this. And I also love what I do. So you're going to hear me speak very passionately. This is a no BS podcast. So if I say something on this podcast, it is the 100% truth. And if we give advice, it's things that we've seen work time and time and time again. They're tried and true. We're never going to give advice if we haven't seen it work, okay? So if we get a question, which I hope we get many today, we also have questions that were sent in earlier this week. We are going to do our best to guide you from afar, and that's part of the reason why we decided to launch this podcast. So as we're getting into it, we have, looks like people are joining, which is great. We're getting text messages as we speak, which is awesome. I hope all of you can hear us out there. Please obviously post in the chat, and you can keep the questions coming, or you can let us know if you, for whatever reason, can't hear us. Again, this is the first episode, so we may have to work through some things, but hopefully everything is, everybody can hear us and everything's going well. So anyway, to get back into it, again, why a podcast? So really, I have a lot of opinions. So that's partially the reason, but also I think even more importantly, I've asked Alyssa to be here. Again, many of you who have met Alyssa, again, if you're a client of ours, I asked Alyssa to be here. I thought it was very appropriate. Not only does Alyssa help us out, help out with the board and train dogs, but also it was partially, well, not partially, it was our journey that why Hope Gables Canine started in the first place. So Alyssa has every right to be sitting here just as much as I do because it was our journey that really started this company. So I'm going to get into that for a moment. And then again, we're going to get into questions. But a little bit of background. We have two Australian Shepherds. Again, many of you know this. I'm going to give the Spark Notes version of this. And Layla, who's one of our Aussies, developed pretty severe reactivity at a young age. And reactivity is something that we deal with all the time. And why I feel so closely connected to what I do is because without somebody guiding myself, Angelo, who owns the Art of Canine, and really he was the one that sparked our interest in this in the first place. He helped Layla and helped rehabilitate Layla, and I was so fascinated, and we were so fascinated by that process. If it wasn't for, and I hate using buzzwords, but if it wasn't for balanced training, I remember it like it was yesterday. We had a list of pros and cons, and one of those was to send Layla away. I'm trying not to get emotional. So one of those was to send Layla away because the behavior was so bad. And I remember Alyssa was in tears. She was on the couch, and we were at our wits' end, and we didn't know what to do. So we did what most people do. We went on Google and we started searching trainers, went through multiple trainers, and it seemed like the issue only got worse. until it came time that we evaluated that a board and train was going to be the best solution for Layla. There was a lot that happened in between that. But I'm so connected to this, and we're so connected because we were either going to send Layla to, I think, Alyssa's parents at the time. We were living in an apartment building, and we were getting notes slipped under our door like, hey, your dog is losing her mind every time she sees one of our dogs. It was a mess. And so I remember that day like it was yesterday. And that's why I'm so passionate about this, because we almost had to send our dog away. Okay. And I can tell you that many of our clients walk through this front door here, and many of them are in tears. Many of them are anxious. Many of them don't know if their dog is going to be able to live with them based on the current state of their behavior. So we've been there, and I know I say that all the time, but it's true. And we've gone through all the emotional roller coasters that all of you, if you're struggling with a dog, we are going through right now. Okay. Now, some of you are dealing with severe behaviors. Some of you are dealing with mild behaviors. Okay. But it's all equally important. Okay. So, I take a basic obedience case just as important as I take, equally important as I take a behavior modification case. Okay. So it's all important. Okay. So that's a little bit of background of our story. And that's really where Hope Gables Canine began. And since then we've grown, we have an entire team now. It's massive. And it's growing every day, which is amazing. I'm so fortunate to be able to do what I do. So thank you, all of you out there, and all of you that are tuning in and watching, but also thank you for anybody that's ever supported us in any capacity. And we don't take that lightly at all. So a little bit of background of us, a little background about our journey. And again, why we're sitting here today. And so hopefully that gives a little context to why we do what we do and why we spend so much time doing it. So I'm going to let Alyssa speak in a moment. I want her to also equally give her perspective. But the You Heard Me podcast is really going to be a no BS version of dog training advice. Okay. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like for us to start getting into questions. And again, feel free to post in the chat if you have questions at home as well. So Alyssa, I'm going to have you pull up your phone. I know we reviewed some of the questions that we got earlier this week. And so we're going to go through those, and then we'll also take questions live as well. Okay, so what do we got? So we got first question?
Yes. So first question is, having trouble walking multiple dogs at the same time. What do you recommend?
All right, so we get this one a lot. Multi-dog households are tough. Okay. So whether it's walking, whether it's for any reason, right? You're dealing with multiple personalities, and we have 2 Australian Shepherds. So, I mean, we understand that. And obviously we have the board and train dogs here as well. Walking multiple dogs at the same time. All right. So I don't know enough about the context of the situation. I'm going to make an assumption that the dogs are probably pulling. I don't know how they act, or if they're getting triggered, or if they're reactive. But what tends to happen is there's a domino effect, right? Where dogs they'll feed off of each other's energy. And Alyssa and I saw this with our 2 dogs. Funnily enough, Layla's reactivity was actually Ash, our other Aussie, was feeding off of that. And then all of a sudden, Ash, who was never reactive, ended up becoming reactive. So you're going to get a lot of that in multi-dog households where dogs are feeding off of each other. And what starts to happen is they start sharing those bad behaviors because they're influencing each other. So again, I don't know a lot of context about this individual situation, but my recommendation would be, we do this here. We take in multiple dogs into our board and train. You have to train them separately to some degree. Okay. You're not going to see a dog trainer take in 2 dogs on day 1 and just start training them in the same room. It's not going to happen. So what my recommendation would be, if it's a walking issue, you're going to have to separate them. You're going to have to treat them individually because they have individual personalities. And you're going to have to set aside time to do training sessions with each of them individually. I would recommend not to walk them together. I know that we're strapped for time. I know a lot of people have hectic schedules, but you're not doing any good walking them together if they're pulling on the end of the leash. So maybe cut their walks in half. So you're still doing you're spending the same amount of time, but maybe in the interim, while you're teaching them how to walk nicely on a leash, train them indoors without distractions. That's another mistake that people make. They rush right outside and they try to train new behaviors. It's not going to happen. Train indoors, see the behavior indoors first, then start transferring it outside. I wouldn't bring the second dog into the mix right away, and I would make sure both dogs are reliable right off individually before you start bringing them back together again. But generally, walking multiple dogs at the same time is very difficult for one person. Alyssa and I did this a lot, where Alyssa would take Ash, I would take Layla, and we would walk together, but I wouldn't have 2 leashes and she wouldn't have 2 leashes. So if you have a significant other, a partner, etc., to help you out, I would highly recommend that as well. Hopefully that helped. Okay. What else we got?
Okay. So we live in an apartment complex, very familiar for what we experienced. And every time someone walks by our door, our dog freaks out and starts barking and rushing to the front doorway or nearby window. How can I stop this from happening?
Okay. So the apartment complex, sorry, what was the end of read that to me one more time? I didn't catch the whole thing.
Living in an apartment complex, every time someone walks by the door, our dog freaks out, starts barking, rushes to the doorway or nearby window. How can they stop this from happening?
Okay. Well, there's a couple different things you could do. My recommendation, I'm going to sound like a broken record. This is going to be my answer for a lot of these. Maybe not all of them, but certainly not all of them. But I would teach a place command. Okay. You see dogs on place a lot on our Instagram. There's a reason for it. If you foster a calm environment indoors, okay, you're not going to have a dog living in the yellow. So I describe calmness as green, yellow, and red, right? Kind of like a traffic light, okay? Most dogs indoors are living in like the yellow and orange zone, okay? And we don't typically see that because, we get used to our dogs sort of living in that zone. So a dog that's living like that, you sort of get used to, because you get, you don't see the yellow and orange mind state that your dog is in until they explode, right? And so the whole goal of teaching a place command is to bring your dog into the green zone. Okay, if your dog is actively living in the green zone every day, then when they're triggered, they're not just going to explode. Okay, so how do you get your dog to live in the green zone? Well, one of the easiest ways to do that is teaching a place command. And you teach your dog how to stay there and how to relax. A lot of people they struggle with this, but I want everybody to remember that teaching calmness is it's a skill, right? And you have to teach it. Dogs will settle themselves, but they will never settle. Most dogs will never settle when you need them to. And so it's important to teach your dog how to settle on your cue. And so like for this individual, I would recommend trying to get the dog to live in the green zone, and teach a place command or teach a downstay, but place would be the recommendation. Next.
And that would also be for if you have visitors, right? Coming into your home, you would want to teach them a place command.
Yeah.
So not rush the door and.
Yeah. So place can actually be used for like 1,000 different reasons. Okay. This is particular individual I would recommend for that specifically. But yes, I mean, there are dogs that, or rather, let me take a step back. There are owners that come to us complaining that they can't even get through a work call without their dog nudging them or whatever. Some other use cases, and I'm glad you just brought this up. Some other use cases would be, you're cooking and you don't want your dog to be scavenging. People coming through the front door, like Alyssa just said.
You're having like a family gathering, Thanksgiving, a lot of people coming over.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people coming over. Holidays is huge. When Alyssa and I, when we go to our parents' houses, we bring the place boards with us. So holidays is a big one. That's when dogs are usually living in that yellow to orange zone, and that's where a lot of bite incidents actually happen. And we get tons of calls after the holidays for that reason. So holidays is huge, but you don't want to wait to the holidays to teach a place command. I would recommend starting now. And we're going to have videos on all of this stuff. That's the next initiative that we're going to launch, the podcast being the first, but we will have courses that will be live on how to teach all of this stuff. Good point.
Okay. The next question is, just bought an e-collar. Where do you recommend that we start?
Okay, so this is not going to be an easy answer. I'm going to do the best that I can. Where would I start? Okay, well, the first place, and this is probably not the answer that everybody was expecting me to say, but the first place would be what's the model of the e-collar? I cannot tell you how many times I've walked into a home and somebody has said, "Oh, we already have an e-collar," and I've told them to throw it in the garbage. All right, so these like cheap $30 Amazon e-collars are no good. All right, and I'm going to explain why. So it all starts with the technology you're using. Okay, look at this podcast. It took us far too long to launch this because of all the different technology that we had to buy. Some technology was good, some technology was bad, some technology we had to return. It was a nightmare. But our job is to help alleviate a lot of that frustration of having to navigate all of that. So my recommendation would be to get the right e-collar. That's the start. All right, make sure you have the right e-collar. We recommend e-collar technologies. You could also go Dogtra, which is another really good e-collar brand. But where you start is you make sure you have the right e-collar brand. If let's say you have Dogtra, let's say you have e-collar technologies, I would recommend, again, I wish we had videos. Our videos aren't finished yet, but I would recommend, Tyler Muto actually has a really good e-collar course. Consider the Dog, is his online, video on demand. I think it's a nominal amount per month. But Tyler Muto has an awesome e-collar course, and I share it with everybody. It's amazing. So I would recommend maybe checking out his course, and I think that's probably a good start.
And why would you recommend the e-collar technology versus what other people come to you with their e-collar? What's the difference? Usually they say that, oh, it jumps from
Oh, right.
5
Yeah.
to
I mean,
10
yeah. I mean, so
to
yeah.
where
So
e-collar has 100, and
this is why I have
explain that.
This is why I have Alyssa here. So yes, the reasoning why you don't want to just go with any model is because, what happens is those cheaper models, they jump like 5 levels, right? So, like 5 levels at a time. Okay. Some of the Dogtra ones do that too. But e-collar technologies goes by 1 level at a time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 100. The reason why you don't want to use an e-collar that jumps like 5 levels or even 10 levels, or I don't know, I don't think any e-collar jumps 10 levels, but is you could either be too low or too high. Okay, so when you're teaching an e-collar, you want that granularity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What if I told you that I've worked with dogs that feel level 1? Could you imagine using an e-collar that jumped 5 levels? I mean, just everybody think about that for a second. I'm not trying to sell anybody an e-collar. I'm really not, okay? But I don't want to see your dog jump out of their skin because you're using one of those cheap collars that you find on Amazon. And yeah, okay, it's $30, but you're waking your dog out because you can't find their working level because the e-collar is jumping 4 or 5 levels at a time. So that's a very good point. And that's the reasoning behind that.
Okay. My dog jumps and counter surfs constantly. It's hard with young kids who aren't mature enough yet to understand to not throw scraps or feed the dog from the table. Any tips would be appreciated.
Okay, so this is a 2-part answer. Jumping and counter surfing in general, you could just correct. All right, so just correct it. I'm not gonna tiptoe around some of these answers. Again, this is no BS. I know it's not popular to talk about corrections in dog training. Corrections are nothing earth-shattering. When we were going through our process, Layla's rehabilitation process, and we had to start learning how to use an e-collar and how to correct behaviors, we found out very quickly that corrections actually wasn't anything bad. All it did was stop the bad behavior. Layla still loved us. We still had a great relationship. I know that Alyssa was apprehensive using certain tools, and I certainly was apprehensive in the beginning. Once you realize that a correction doesn't hurt anything, and it creates no emotional damage, it creates no physical damage, it certainly doesn't create any relationship issues. Your dog is going to love you after you correct them for jumping, believe me. So, I mean, look, just correct it. Your dog jumps on the table, correct it. Your dog jumps on somebody, correct it. How would you correct it? That's a story for another day. So yeah, I would just correct it. You could also use a leash. So if your dog is not e-collar trained, and that's very nuanced to how to e-collar train your dog, keep a leash on your dog. Your dog jumps, little leash pop, they stop, conversation's over. Don't pet them, don't pick them up, none of that. Just stop the behavior, let the dog understand that that's not something that they should be doing, and move on. All right, next.
I always like to say the correction creates boundaries, right? Because you have a boundary with your dog. You don't want them jumping on the table, right? So that's what we associate the correction with.
Yeah, I mean, correction, yes, I agree. Corrections can they can certainly enforce boundaries. They can also create clarity. And dogs don't do great with a lack of clarity. And that's why corrections actually work very well, because what you're doing is you're not just explaining to the dog what you do want, you're also explaining what you don't want. All right. So, anybody that's out there right now saying, just you can't correct a behavior with food. Okay. I've never seen it done. You can redirect your dog with food, but you can't actually teach your dog what not to do with food. Okay. Yeah, okay, I scroll through Instagram too. I see really good looking videos of people trying to portray that they correct something with food. But you have to read between the lines. Okay. Does the dog actually know that jumping is bad? Or is the dog just interested in something else? Okay. And then are you going to be relying on that food forever to distract your dog in the moment or what have you? Just look, it's very simple. Your dog jumps, correct them, move on. All right. Your dog's not going to jump again. Okay. So that's also a very good point, but yes.
Okay. Next question. 5-year-old lab mix is highly reactive and has had 2 bite incidents. We're nervous it may happen again. It seems to only be men, but will react to anyone regardless if he gets startled. Okay.
So my theory, and I didn't make up this theory. These questions are always very easy to answer in a short manner. So, hence the podcast for that reason. Reactivity in general comes from 2 different emotions. So, well, not just 2 different emotions, but the main driving emotions for reactivity, and we know this because we've gone through this. Insecurity drives reactivity, and being fearful, and also frustration. So a dog that's frustrated will sometimes react. To get to this individual's question, to answer their specific question, it sounds like there's reactivity and aggression. Maybe I didn't hear the question correctly, but it sounds like this dog actually bit. So this would actually be aggression. It wouldn't be reactivity. So was there a bite history? How many bites? 2 bites?
Yes.
All
2 bite incidents.
2 men.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. So it sounds like the dog just has an aversion to men. Why is that? Who knows? It could be a lack of exposure issue. It could be for a myriad of things. There could have been a negative incident in the past. It could a bunch of things. For why the dog has or is insecure around men specifically, which is what it sounds like. How would you? I mean, yeah. You have to live with your dog in a very specific way now. A dog that is bitten is highly likely to bite again. Because they got away with it. So, what that involves, and we deal with bite cases here, what that involves is having to incorporate boundaries, like what Alyssa was saying, and structure that, which was never probably had before, to keep your dog out of trouble. Your dog does not need to love men, okay? I know there's this idea out there that's thrown out there a lot, which is like, get your dog to love the thing that your dog is going after and biting. Not realistic. Okay, you want to take a chance with that? Real quick, and I told myself that I was going to go light on this first podcast, and Alyssa's probably going to start laughing because that's like not a thing. But I was going to go easy on this one, but I'm going to try to I'm going to try to behave myself. But generally, no, your dog doesn't need to love men to stop biting men. Okay, basically what you do is you incorporate structure. You don't give your dog the leeway to bite men. You certainly establish things like a place command, a down command. I don't know where the bites happened. I don't know if they happened in the front door. I don't know if they happened out on the street. wherever the bites happen, there needs to be rules in that environment, period. The dog needs to know if they're stepping out of line. They need to understand that. What you don't want to do is you don't want to, wherever the bite happened, just start throwing food on the floor. All right. In hopes that your dog is just going to, instead of biting that repairman that's coming through the front door, you're in hopes that your dog is just going to sit and eat some food. All right. You're going to enforce rules, and you're going to say to your dog, no, I don't want you to go after the repairman. It's that simple. I don't understand why people make this so complicated. I don't know how old the dog is. If the dog is super old, or you're going to, it's like it's like our parents, right? And anybody's parents, right? The older we get, and even ourselves, right? I find that the older we get, I don't know if you're going to change, opinions become solidified, and viewpoints become solidified as you get older. Okay. And what happens is that dogs are no different. If dogs have a viewpoint of something and they've practiced a certain behavior for so long, getting your dog to reverse that, and depending on how old the dog is not, it's possible, but you don't want to, you have to stop the bad stuff. I guess that's what I'm trying to get to. You have to stop the bad behavior. Okay. This is not new news. Okay. There's many trainers that talk about this. You have to teach the dog that that's not okay. All right. How would you do that? It's, there's many ways, but I would start with incorporating structure. Okay. So let's say the bite happened at the front door. All right. Well, what are you going to stop? You're going to stop your dog charging the front door. Okay. You're going to teach an alternative, right? You're not just going to teach an alternative, but you're going to enforce that alternative. All right. So we do a lot of place when people enter the door. In fact, if you scroll through our Instagram, we have delivery men coming in and out. We have our board and train dogs on place. They're not charging them. They're not lunging at them. They're not biting them. And we've had dogs that have bitten delivery people come to us, and we have delivery people come into our house and they're not biting them. Okay. Structure works. All right. I don't know how else to put that. Okay. Your delivery man comes through the front door, your dog comes off place, you're going to correct them from coming off place, they're going to go back. Guess what? If your dog doesn't come off place and a delivery man comes in, guess what? You get to reward them for that challenging moment. Okay. So it's not, you're going to build your dog's confidence. Even though, yes, dogs need to understand right from wrong, it's equally important to reward your dog for the challenging moments. I want to make sure that's very clear. Okay. So if a repairman or a contractor comes through my front door and I have a dog with a bite history and they stay and they're like, hey, I'm cool with this guy, you better believe I'm going to go and reward that dog. Now, I don't want the dog to be dependent on rewards to do that, but I am going to reward the dog and let them know that, hey, that was a really good job. I know that was very hard for you. And I also know that you're still learning too. So it's not all about, corrections and things. I hate using the word balance, but it is a balance. All right. It's setting expectations and it's letting the dog know and giving the dog an opportunity to do the right things. Okay. Here's the problem. When we don't enforce some level of structure, we're not giving our dogs an opportunity to succeed. I'm going to stop for a moment. I'm going to repeat that. When we don't enforce rules and structure, we are not giving our dogs an opportunity to succeed. Why are we not giving our dogs an opportunity to succeed? Because our dogs are not getting the clarity in how to live their day. And so we cannot expect our dogs to succeed if we are not establishing some sense of structure which they can follow. And guess what? Every dog that comes through our board and train, they all excel with structure. And so we see this work every single month, okay? We have to get away from this idea of let the dog just be a dog, because guess what? That doesn't work. That leads to dogs biting people coming through the door. That leads to dogs pulling people down. I can't tell you how many clients have been pulled down the stairs by their dog. I have a client that literally, I'm not going to name names. I have a client that I think she broke her leg or broke her hip or something. Her dog pulled her down the deck stairs. Okay. We have to get away from this idea where there are just no rules. All right. I'm not all about rules. I'm about fun too. If you scroll through our Instagram, you see dogs running all over Oyster Park and having tons of freedom, but it has to be balanced. All right. I don't know another way to put that. And it's so important that people understand that, because we're not setting our dogs up for success if we're not doing these things. We're just not. And so if you feel a certain way about this, if you feel a certain way about incorporating some level of structure, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to walk around with army pants and camel pants all day, but you have to set expectations. All right. The lack of expectations is what gets dogs into trouble. All right. That's my little rant. I promise I'm not going to rant on every single answer to question here, but this is important stuff. This is why the podcast exists. And it also exists for, potential clients and existing clients to maybe reinforce some level of clarity here of what exactly it means to continue training. Whether your dog does a board and train or does a 50 lesson private package, which doesn't exist, but it doesn't matter how much training your dog does if it's not enforced. It needs to be enforced. It needs to be enforced to the point where the dog does not want to do the things like this individual is describing, where they're biting people. You're going to get sued. Okay. Nobody wants to get sued. Nobody wants to have to send their dog away, and nobody wants to have animal control knocking on their door. We have to start taking this stuff seriously. Okay. So that's my piece on that. Anyway, anything you want to add to that?
I have a question.
I have an answer.
What are some other ways to enforce structure? Like, we get a lot of clients that always come and say, oh, am I still going to let my dog, or let them be allowed on the couch, let them sleep in the bed with me? And what is your recommendation when it comes to questions like that when they ask that? Because that's other ways of being able to enforce structure. Because why? Constantly letting them on the couch, constantly letting them in the bed. That's,
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, right? We can speak from our personal experience. We're going to keep drawing to our personal experience because we're not just sitting here. I didn't set out to become a dog trainer. I think that's very important also for everybody to realize. Like, I'm not sitting here because of any other reason than we had to go through this ourselves. All right. So we're going to keep drawing back to our personal story because our interest is helping you succeed. Okay. I was working in Manhattan. Alyssa works in Manhattan still. And if I wanted to make a ton of money, if I wanted to be a millionaire, I would have stayed in Manhattan. Okay. It's great to make a living. There's nothing wrong with that. But I say that to say that I'm not in this to, become a multi-billionaire. I'm in this to help you guys succeed. And so it's really, really important that we keep mentioning this, because if we're going to give you advice, I'm telling you, it's what you need to do. All right. And it's what we needed to do to have Layla still live with us peacefully. Okay. And that's why, again, we speak so passionately about this. All right.
Anytime you want to try and give your dog some leeway or freedom.
Yes, she's drawing me back to like to what the question was, because sometimes I ramble. But yes.
Anytime you do that,
yes,
right?
Yes. So here's what happens, right? Is it's not forever. Okay. You're going to enforce structure until your dog starts viewing the home in a little bit of a different way. All right. In a way where they're not like, I'm just going to wake up and just do all the things that I used to do, until those old habits, those bad habits float away. And they will. I promise you, the bad habits will go away. They will.
You have to be consistent.
You have to be consistent. And there is nobody that's going to tell you the day that they're going to go away. I can't tell you. Nobody's going to tell, hey, on this day, you can start letting your dog on the couch every day again. Nobody can tell you that. But what I say to all my clients is this: you will know when. I can't tell you. I'm not going to be living at your home with you. You're going to know where you wake up. And we had this epiphany point too, where you're going to wake up and you're going to go, wow, it's so common here. Wow. I'm not dealing with all the behaviors that I was dealing with a couple months ago. And you should pat yourself on the back for being consistent, because that's how you get there. And then what you can start doing is going, okay, let me let you on the couch today, just as a luxury for all the hard work that you've done as well as a dog. And so we let Layla and Ash on the couch in the bed. I mean, we have them sleep in the bed sometimes. We're able to enjoy our dogs. None of this means that you can't enjoy your dog. It just means that if you're dealing with a severe behavior issue, if you're not happy with your dog's behavior, why are you giving them all the luxuries? You're sending mixed messages. And so what you have to do is you have to take those luxuries away until you see the better behavior, and then you can start tipping the scale back to a healthier point.
And rewarding them.
And so dogs understand this. They get it. Okay, but that's what leadership is. Leadership is saying, hey, I need you to be up to a certain level here in this home, and you'll be able to enjoy whatever you want to enjoy. You just can't do the things that we see the dogs coming into our board and train doing. Biting, lunging, pulling people down, chasing after dogs, not allowing people to leave their home without tearing their home. I mean, I'm going to butcher the quote, where Sean O'Shea, who's another trainer, I think said this, was like, why are we so concerned with our dogs being upset with us when they're pulling our arm out and they're lunging at people and they're doing all these things? We need to focus on the work. All right. We need to focus on our dogs having a healthier mind state. And then, like I said, we can ask all those questions of when can I let my dog on the bed and couch again? But you need to focus on the work. You can't not focus on the work. All right. You will get there though, if you focus on it. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. All right. Anyway, what's the next question?
Any puppy training tips? I think like also you get a lot of clients that also call you for puppies that are like, they're going to pick up their dog tomorrow and they're 8 weeks old. Along with that, another question, what age range would you recommend starting training like this? Because, you know, you want to be able to kind of catch
Yeah, I mean, look,
at the beginning of their learning and development.
Yeah, I mean, so I would start training. I mean, you could start training. I mean, everybody says start training them when they're young, and that's true. I mean, what people don't say, and I think this is also really important, is that you can't. If you have a 12-week-old puppy, if you have a 12-week-old puppy, okay, you have to set your expectations. You have a baby in your home, okay? You have a furry baby in your home, okay? It's literally it's an infant animal, okay? That doesn't mean that you shouldn't start training, but you have to set your expectations and understand that this dog is maturing and growing and going through all sorts of emotional, hormonal changes. I mean, the whole 9 yards, okay? What's going to happen is your dog's going to nip. Your puppy's going to nip. Your puppy's going to jump. Your puppy's going to do all sorts of puppy behaviors. I used to call it, when I dealt with puppies all the time, I used to call it the puppy shell. And the puppy shell is almost the same for I don't care the breed. It's like almost the same for every puppy.
And a lot of people do call you being like, my dog is nipping. And you're like,
right.
Well, how old are they?
Right.
And you're like, well, they're like a month old. That's normal.
It's
right?
normal.
It's not showing aggressiveness necessarily. That's just puppy behavior.
Yeah, and we saw this a lot during COVID where there were first-time dog owners and we would get the question of like, my dog's aggressive, and I would ask like, how old's your dog? And I would get like 12 weeks. And 99% of the time the dog wasn't aggressive. The dog was just nipping. But I get it. I mean, if you've never had a dog before, you get very nervous when your dog is pulling at you and growling and things like that, but it's not aggression. It's all things that puppies are going to do. So getting back to the answer to the question, the things that you can start training, a lot of luring and rewarding. Find a treat that your dog loves, start luring them into behaviors, down and start leash walking stuff. Keep a leash on in the home. You get them used to walking by your side in the home. There's so many things that you could do. What you can't do is you're not going to like off leash heel your dog at like 12 weeks. You can get started, but again, the things that you want to do are the basics. Okay. Start teaching your dog the words, potty training, get that. Don't have pee pads all throughout your house and then expect your dog not to have accidents. That's another one that we get all the time. Like again, mixed messages are not great in dog training. Okay. So if you have pee pads all throughout your home and then you're like, well, I want my dog to go outside, you have to ask yourself, do you blame the dog? So there's a lot of things when you're raising a puppy that you should really sit down and think about, how am I being clear with my puppy?
You have to take the dog out every 3 hours or 2 hours in order to potty train them outside, not leaving a wee pad.
Right. I mean, I just in general just don't like I get it. We come from the city, and a lot of our friends use wee pads and stuff like that. And I get it, right? There's a use case for it. But if you have the means to take your dog out and you want them to go out there, then don't send mixed messages to your dog. I think that's my general answer to that question is you can start training, but even more so, don't send mixed messages to your dog if you're trying to your puppy, if you're trying to set expectations from a very young age.
Also, their mind is like this. They get distracted at the littlest thing. So teaching them just the basics, like you said, sit,
right.
Things like that. Learning those easy words is probably the first thing right off the bat.
Just get them used to a verbal structure of commands. Find a treat they like, find something that motivates them, build that motivation, use that motivation, and build a foundation. Next.
This is not a question. Just want to say that it's awesome you guys are starting to focus more on content. We're here for it. That's exciting.
Great. Thank you. Long time coming.
Okay. We think our dog may need a board and train. Where should we be looking?
Well, depending on how this how they intended the question. Where or what should you be looking for? I guess I'll answer. I mean, where, well, if you're local to us, you can definitely hit us up. But I mean, generally, look at reviews. Generally, read between the lines. If there's a red flag, then usually it's not going to get better from there. Is the person prompt in answering your inquiry? I mean, look, if there's a red flag from the beginning, or if the person's not responsive, then it's going to get any better from there? I mean, there are a lot of things when you're evaluating a board and train, which I'm not going to go through all of them now, but I mean, look at reviews, look at their Instagram, look at their work. I mean, that's why we post so much work on our Instagram. In terms of where should we be looking, I mean, I think that's, maybe I answered that. In terms of where, I mean, Google, that's how we found ours.
Yeah.
I don't know. I maybe that was, I don't know. Hopefully I answered that question, but right. Okay, cool. Next.
And even I think what makes us so great and unique is we have the personal experience to relate to our
right. Yeah,
clients.
Exactly. I mean, and look, there are dog trainers that don't have a personal experience with a dog with a behavior issue. It doesn't mean that they're not any good.
No, I'm just saying.
No, but I mean, yes, obviously. But no, I mean, look, there are many trainers out there that I highly respect that I don't think have had a dog with a behavior issue, and I really enjoy their work. But yes, I mean, a lot of people do come to us with like reactive dogs because they know that we literally lived that for a very long time. So, I mean, look, that doesn't mean that that's what you have to look for. It just means that that's something that's why people usually gravitate to us for that specific issue. But
personal,
yeah, right. Yeah. Next.
I don't have any more questions.
All right. So what we have a few people, I know people are tuned in right now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give a moment for people to type into the chat box. Hopefully the chat box is working. This is honestly the first time we're using this software. So can somebody, whoever's tuned in, just type in the chat box and hopefully it's working, and just say hello or even ask a question, so that we can at least verify that this is working correctly. Could you imagine if like we've been talking this whole time and we weren't live? I'm pretty sure we're live. But if not, we're going to upload it on YouTube and share the clips on Instagram, so you're going to see it anyway. But all right, so does anybody have a question? I'm going to go in, let's see, and just double check here. All right, I think I'm on the right thing. All right, well, we'll give it a moment. If we don't get any questions, what we'll do is, we're about 45 minutes in. We'll just end it there. I think we answered some really good questions. And again, so in terms of the format, we will post on our stories. All these questions that we just went through were submitted from our stories. So we're going to post on Instagram stories and allow you to ask questions leading up to the podcast. This way, if you can't tune in, the benefit of that is we get to still answer your question. And then obviously for those that tune in, you can answer, or you can submit your questions as well.
Or if you didn't have time to tune in live, you can still send us, DM us any questions you have, and we can answer them for next week. Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody for tuning in. Catch us next week. We are live on Thursdays at 8 p.m. and we'll post the reminders. And thanks, everybody. Take care. We'll see you again next time.